All right. I know it's been a long time. Things have been happening. Life has been lifing. I'm back. And believe it or not, I actually haven't missed a step. Hello, everyone. My name is Erin James. And in this video, I'm going to go through the movies that have been releasing in the past month that I never was able to, or I never took the time to really make individual reviews for. At the end of April, the Atlanta Film Festival was going on. That's a good 10 days long. I was doing photography for them. I was networking, talking to filmmakers while there. I was attending, I was taking in the community of people that love film. So that took up a lot of my time at that moment. And then right after that, I had about a week break to relax, did some editing for the pictures at the festival, spent most of that time chilling, writing, and I went to the movies, caught up on a few films. The very following week, I started an accelerated course. So it is a college course, a semester's worth, crammed into 10 days or 2 weeks. And so from Monday to Friday, from 8 to 12:30, I was in class, followed by assigned reading, where I would be quizzed on that assigned reading the very next day, had to write 3 essays in total, had a midterm at the beginning of the second week, then final at the end of that week, essay as well, two additional essays. So it was pretty busy. Fortunately, during that time, I was still also able to catch up on movies, went to the theaters, watched a few films, went to some screenings. I even recorded a review for each of these movies that I watched. And now we are here. I was able to even watch Furiosa, the Garfield movie, a few other films, and I recorded reviews for them. But when it got down to it, I saw how many notes I took for Furiosa alone, and I felt that in making that review and then having to edit the other ones, it would be a lot for me, even if I did it all at once and just dumped them all for you. So I decided I'm gonna just go over each of these films here, do a quick review of them. I will do a Furiosa review separately because I have quite a bit of notes for it. First, we have Challengers that, people have been talking about, raving about for a couple weeks now. It is about a former tennis prodigy who ends up, after an injury, no longer plays and ends up being a coach for someone who ends up being her husband and the father of her child. And he's dealing with a losing streak. And so to get him out of that slump, she challenges or organizes or plans a match to get him to play against his former best friend, who was also her ex. This movie has quite a few things to really appreciate and enjoy, such as the cinematography for the most part, the way it looks. I think the performances overall were nice. I think Josh O'Connor fit the film overall, at least his character. I think his character had an interesting backstory and was just as trash as you would expect him to be. Mike Feist, he was very thespian. That's the feeling I got from him. His performance was not bad, but it felt like he was meant for more dramatic role than this movie. I had no issues with Zendaya, but her character, I didn't really connect with her character. I did not care for her character. And that's not to say I did not dislike her. I understood that, felt like that was the point of it. But I never saw any reason why anyone would be attracted to her because I do not know anything about her. We have these two characters who clamor over her, but what is there to like about her aside from you both love tennis and sure, she's attractive. But to be with her for over a decade, I'm wondering what else is there about her that made you want to stay. And also, someone else made a good point. Why does she like them, considering how attractive she is and she could be with anyone? I was very much more interested in the friendship amongst the two guys, which maybe that's the point. But it felt like that was kind of a tease of what could be. But we kept returning to these romantic elements that I had no interest in, or it was just badly written, and it felt kind of boring. I feel this movie is about 10 minutes, 15 minutes longer than the actual story is because of the dragging on of many scenes and moments and the music trying to swell up, which did sound good. It was so stylized that it almost ended up being humorous, reminding me of anime in a sense, and I'm seeing that a lot of other people felt that way. But I ended up chuckling at some scenes because of how dramatic they were making it. And I ended up walking out feeling it looked nice, but nothing really stuck with me, and it was fine. This movie is less of a tennis film and more of, again, just drama about friends and friendship. And I was more into that than anything else. Next, we have Not Another Church Movie, which is a parody of Tyler Perry, following a character named Taylor Harry. Harry spelled P-H-E-R-R-Y, the P is silent. And it is about this wealthy doctor, lawyer, preacher, or pastor, and he's helping the community, but he wants to help the community more. So Jesus comes down and tells him to write a screenplay, even though he has no experience with films, doesn't know how to format, how to shoot a film or anything. Jesus said it's fine, do it. So now we have this movie, which is a collection of skits woven in by a poorly written narrative and just setups for puns that are titles of Tyler Perry movies. And I get it. It reminds me a lot of early 2000s black films, black parody films specifically. And I think if you grew up with those movies or grew up in the culture, then you very much understand it and you have some appreciation for it. And that's the kind of appreciation I had for this film, although it is not very good. It had its moments, and surprisingly, it had a decent cast. But, you know, you walk out, you watch it, you're like, all right, I can move on with my life? Sure. Next up, we have Tarot, which is about a group of friends who end up staying at some place and they find a deck of tarot cards. And it is an unspoken rule to use someone else's tarot cards, and they decide to anyway, which inflicts a curse on them. I see what you're trying to do, but you did really bad at executing it. There were a couple moments that I really felt terrified. I thought it was very well shot, and I felt that if I was in that situation, I would be scared. This is very well done. But then there were other scenes, most scenes, that felt very lazily done and contrived and almost did not follow continuity throughout the story. The beginning scene when they have their cards read or their fortune read, I'm not sure what it's called. I feel like that scene was shot after the deaths because they were so on the nose and predicted very descriptively how the person would die. And the character was speaking, that was doing the readings. She was speaking in so many metaphors and doesn't speak that way for the rest of the movie. So I was kind of confused on that. So that was inconsistent. And it seemed like they forgot about a character because they try to cover it up with a scene kind of like a mid-credit scene. But it was lazily done, and it actually made me more upset than me leaving with the question of how something happened. So them trying to answer it and kind of giving us a bullshit answer was a bit upsetting. Movie overall, I think people will enjoy it if you're into horror movies. I think you will be slightly entertained. I think a lot of younger people will enjoy it overall. It just didn't make sense in certain parts, and so I ended up feeling, hey, I watched a bad horror movie, so that's the fun I can get from that. Another movie I watched is Babes, which follows a middle-aged woman who ends up having a one-night stand. She gets pregnant, and so she seeks help from her friend who is seemingly in a happy marriage, has 2 kids of her own, and follows her as she prepares to be a mother, follows her through pregnancy. I feel this movie was a good ode to all the mothers in the world who have sacrificed so much to make sure their child is safe, healthy, and secure, and, happy even before we come out the womb. And just how much goes into being a mother, or even preparing to be a mother, just being pregnant alone. There's a lot that goes into it, and I think this movie shows respect to it, and I appreciate what they were trying to do. I think my biggest issue is that the movie is not as funny as I think it wanted to be. I felt some jokes were forced or dragged on too long. It had a couple moments, but overall, I did not care for it. I'm a fan of Alana Glazer and a fan of her previous work, including her show Broad City. I watched that religiously when it came out, but I understand her kind of humor, it can be hit or miss at times, and even in the show, it had those moments. I think her kind of comedy is something to look at, though, because she does not over-explain things. She treats her audience like they're intelligent, and she does not try to overcomplicate things. And so when you go in, you get the joke or you don't, and even if you get it, it may or may not be funny, but I think it's worth it. It opens up a lot of her jokes often open up dialogue or conversations to have. Next up, we have the movie that I like most out of these movies that I'm mentioning in this video, The Fall Guy. 87 North has always been making movies to highlight stunt doubles and stunt people in films and what they've contributed, and very much pushing for an awards category for stunt people, which I'm very much for. I'm very much for a category for horror films as well. I'm a big fan of Ryan Gosling and his performances. I always enjoy Emily Blunt's performances, so having them together, cool. So now we have a romance comedy about a former stuntman or someone who just, having a bad time after an incident on set. He gets hired back on for his ex-girlfriend's directorial debut. I believe it's her directorial debut. And he's playing the stunt double for the lead, who happens to have gone missing. So he has to go and find our lead before the movie finishes shooting. So you have some cool action sequences that do not take themselves too seriously. It's fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the journey, the adventure. I couldn't really tell you my favorite part because it was just a fun ride to go along with. I will say the ending was pretty spectacular, and David Leitch makes sure to give his stunt people opportunities to really be in the movie and show what they can do and how they contribute to making action scenes so spectacular, so amazing. They put their bodies literally on the line to make scenes look good and look cool and look brutal. I really enjoyed the movie. It did not do great in the box office. Apparently it's supposed to be like a remake of a very old show, I believe. I did not know that. I assumed it was original IP, and I'm sure a lot of other people do. So for that reason, it probably didn't make a lot of money. It's very difficult to make new IP make that money. And the box office has really been struggling recently, so there's also that. And Ryan Gosling has never really been a box office draw, no matter how good of a performer he is, no matter how good the movie that he's in. Blade Runner 2049 was a flop, which is not surprising. It's a sequel to another movie that flopped, no matter how big it had become following it, no matter how big the fan base is in making it a cult classic. The sequel was bound to fail, to be honest. Next up, we have The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. This movie follows the trilogy from last decade, and I would assume probably takes place 10 years later. Apes have been scattered, formed their own tribes, villages. One ape is trying to build an empire, and they're pillaging other villages and other communities, taking those apes and using them as labor to open up a bunker with a bunch of human weapons. And we follow a brand new protagonist, Noah, whose tribe has been pillaged, and he goes on the hunt to get them back and free them. Along the way, he runs into a human named Maya, and she is not like the other infected humans. She can speak, she's relatively civilized, I suppose, and she has her own purpose. She's on her own mission, which I very much appreciate, because it didn't come across as she was just put here to forcibly guide us through this world like they do with many other Planet of the Apes movies. I actually do not like that in all the Planet of the Apes movies up to this point, we have to follow a human in this world of apes as if we need a human around to connect with. And I would say that's probably my issue with this movie, but there's only one human, so it wasn't too big of an issue. And also, she was not the main protagonist. Noah, an ape, was. And I really enjoyed this adventure that we went along with. I did not mind there not being as much action as expected, because most Planet of the Apes movies do not have a lot of action, even though that seems to be a problem people have with this movie. I liked a lot of the approaches. This was everything I could ask for from a Planet of the Apes movie, because I don't go in with high expectations. I go in watching these movies the way I watch most Transformers films. Next up, we have the Garfield movie, and I'll say right now, the animation was lazy. It felt very unoriginal. It felt like something we've seen many of times recently as far as animation. I did not care about Garfield, the character. I don't care about Chris Pratt voicing Garfield. Garfield was not even the second most interesting character in this movie. You have the dog, very interesting, and then this bull voiced by Ving Rhames, who probably had the funniest lines in this movie. It's an adventure movie where Garfield and his dog, they get kidnapped, and in order to get free, they have to help with a heist. And on this heist, he's also having to work with his father that apparently abandoned him. This movie was cool. It's a good family film. It's a typical family movie, but I was not very interested in the movie. And for it to be an hour and 40 minutes and supposed to be a family film, you're really pushing it. You're making some risks. It did not need to be an hour 40. I felt every minute of this movie. And there are movies or animated films that are this long, if not longer, but this one did not keep me interested the entire time. And I'm not going to hear about anyone saying, oh, it's because you're an adult, this was made for kids. I've seen Incredibles. I've seen Incredibles 2, Inside Out. I'm ready for Inside Out 2, Toy Story, movies that are fantastic. I just rewatched Shrek. Shrek is amazing. It holds up clearly. But this movie just doesn't do it for me, and I think they could do much better. The latest animated movie that I could really think of that I really enjoyed was probably The Bad Guys. Last but not least, one of the worst movies this year, The Strangers Chapter 1. Funny enough, I just watched The Strangers Pray at Night the first time watching it, and it just showed me that you don't have to follow the same formula as the first movie. And that one was surprisingly better than both the original and this one. This movie is a complete remake, and although there is denial that it is a remake...
You know what today is?
Today is the third day of our 3-day road trip across the country.
Or our 5-year anniversary.
The story is practically the same. You have the same beats, staying at a cabin, the boyfriend leaving, getting T-boned by a truck, and the lines are very similar. She asks, why are you doing this? And they say, because you're here. In the original, they say, because you're home. I don't know why they changed that. There were just a lot of things that were unnecessary, such as the element of someone having asthma. I swear I know more characters in horror movies that have asthma than I do in real life. And that felt like an element that was supposed to build up the suspense and anxiety, but it actually contributed nothing. And if you removed it, it wouldn't change anything. And I also am very tired of horror movies making an opening scene that's supposed to be like eye-catching and gripping for the audience to get them pulled in. It contributes nothing to the movie. If you remove the opening scene, it doesn't matter. The rest of the movie goes on as it is. And I think people, or execs and writers, are forgetting the point of these attention-grabbing openings. They're supposed to contribute to the story that we are about to follow, and supposed to us figure out what is happening, why is this happening, or how did we get to this point. Anyway, the movie's not good. It is ridiculous. These are some of the dumbest characters I have seen on screen recently, and if they were smart, this story wouldn't happen. I mean, I'm calling the cops if you keep bothering me this late at night and you're acting the way that you are at my front door. Also, the physics of her face being completely black make no sense. And I know it's supposed to suspend some realism, I get it, but it just made no sense at all that it bothered me because the light's coming from inside the house. So her face should be lit up more than the characters who have their back to the light, right? Movie's just horrible, and they're setting up for a trilogy. I don't know what they're going to do with that trilogy. I think it's pointless, and I will still be watching it because I like movies and I like watching bad movies so I can rip them apart. Sorry if I spoke so fast. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I remembered everything and got through it. I didn't write notes for this. And I did write notes for each movie individually when I was going to make an individual review for each one, and I deleted them after I recorded. So there's that. I will be doing a Furiosa movie review on its own. I have my own thoughts about it. For one, not regarding the quality of the movie, but I think they made a huge mistake releasing an R-rated movie on a 3-day weekend or a holiday weekend. Holiday weekends are usually when families go out to the movies more often. So it would make sense to release a PG-13 or lower rating, but they didn't. So that I believe that is a minor contributor to their low box office sales. Also, it's a prequel to a flop, so what'd you expect? Anyway, the rest of it I'll talk about on my next video, so until next time, y'all take care of each other, check up on one another, make sure you check up on yourself, and remember, potential has no limit.